of women and resistance. And as usual, I am your host, Adesoji Iginla, with co hosts and in character, Princess Akutuni Egozindu Mahamud da Silva Santos, otherwise known as Miss Ayayi Fubara Eneli Esquire. How are you, sister?
Good evening, or as my people will say in our original language, Kikongo, Kia Mbote, Kia Mbote. So we're very happy to be here. Greetings to everybody.
So, yes. And we've decided to cross continents. So, we are going to start on the African side and cross to the Americas. But before we do that, it's important to put into context who is Princess Aqualtune.
Well, let me just start by sharing some sounds from, ended up being sounds from both my lands. If you just follow the sound, can you hear me? I'm telling you, the way these sounds just calms me down and takes me back to my ancestral home. Yes, I was a princess in an area now called the Congo. Hmm. Oh, the stories I could tell. I grew up knowing who I was, learning how to fight, knowing how to protect my people spiritually and physically. It was a beautiful time. We lived off the land, but centuries before I was born, I have been told, at least 300 years before I was born, the white man known as the Portuguese started to come to our shores, and they came to our land, and they initially presented as friends, and we would trade with them. We traded things that they bought things from us that they wanted, and we bought things from them that we wanted, and we saw ourselves as equals.
Hmm.
And this was in the 1300s. But then, as time continued to pass, it seems like they got greedier and greedier and greedier. And so, by the time of my father, there was an issue with the succession. And that is always a very precarious time for any group, for any nation, for any um, community,
A
when
period of
the
change.
community is trying to figure out what the change in leadership is going to be. And that is a time of weakness or vulnerability when outsiders can definitely come in and involve themselves.
Hmm.
And so the Portuguese, who had already been infiltrating our culture with Christianity, many had converted to a form of Christianity, still maintaining some of our traditions, but certainly taking on some of the mannerisms of the so called Christians, including even the clothes that we wore. And certainly, we had been trading in weapons. We bought muskets and gunpowder and bullets from them. Um, and around this time as well, they were no longer just content with trading for goods. They now wanted our people.
Hmm.
Our people were a source of wealth for them. And so, what you found happening all around us, where different communities, different groups that had bought arms, were now using those arms against each other. An understanding of, if I can protect myself, then those other people are the people that they can take into slavery. I don't know that we gave as much deep thought as to where are they taking to these people to, and what
Hmm.
will their fate be. Because even in the the wars that we had, there were times when you would capture people from another group, but you integrated them into your community. They became part of your community. Some of them were adopted. They could still eventually rise up in the community, but and live as free people. And so I don't know that my people really had an understanding of what these Portuguese were doing, but we should have, by the amount of brutality that we saw from them. And so during this portion of, can you all of you hear me well? I just
Yes,
want to make
yes,
sure. Okay.
I can.
So during this time when there was this uncertainty with my people, the um, the Portuguese decided to strike. And
Mm,
of course, there's always, unfortunately, in the history of our people, there's always a group that is attempting to um, get ahead. They think by colluding with the white man, and they think that that is going to help them get ahead. And so we had the Mbangala. The Mbangala people were known to be great warriors, and they decided to with put in their lot with the Portuguese and to fight against my people.
mm,
And so, with this happening, um, the major fight took place along what is called the Ulanga River Valley, near the town of Mbuila. It was known as the Battle of Mbuila. And with the Battle of Mbuila, there was a big fight with my king, King Antonio the First, and we fought valiantly. I was part of that fight, that part of that battle. I actually led 10,000 warriors myself. So brutal was this fighting. But unfortunately, in the end, it was the slaughter of King Antonio that so demoralized our people. So many died, over 5,000 men and women, warriors were killed, and King Antonio was killed and decapitated. But not only was he decapitated, and you were going to see this decapitation again, not only was he decapitated, they took his head. They took his head against our culture, against our traditions, and they buried it as a war trophy in Luanda. They put it in actually what they considered their church and showed off the head of King Antonio. Over 100 people who were considered of the royal line, the nobles, were captured, and amongst them was me, Aqualtune. And that began my journey from my beloved homeland to another place now called Brazil.
Before we go across to Brazil, could you put into context what it was like for women in view of the often blood history of the role of women in African societies?
Huh. So, as I told you, I have so many fond memories of my childhood and growing up as a woman in my community. There were really no barriers against us. Yes, we were women and recognized for our femininity and our ability to nurture, but we fully participated in every aspect of society. In fact, in many respects, we understood the duality of the genders. And so, what you saw on one side for men, you would see mirrored on one side for women. So, for instance, if two women had a dispute, they don't have to go before a court or a group of men. The women had their own mechanisms and their own ways of addressing their disputes. And the men equally had a parallel one. One was not greater than the other. Yes, we had kings and there was a social hierarchy, but the fact that we had some differentiated roles, like what the person called king, that was not even our term, but what they would do versus what the person called the queen would do, it was an understanding of they were different, but one was not necessarily more important than the other. Everybody knew their role. In fact, when we would kill an animal, there were parts of the animal that only the men could eat. There were parts of the animal that were reserved for women. It wasn't one better than the other, it was just how things were. Um, and there was a lot of respect, which is why I, as a woman, could lead an army of over 10,000 warriors, many of whom were men,
Mm,
and they
mm.
would still follow my leadership. Because your leadership, yes, I was of royal birth, but you also proved your leadership in your actual work that you did, your abilities. And so that is how it was for me growing up and how it was amongst us.
So, which leads us to wonder, why is it that the European documentation of this time of African history is clearly or can be claimed to be distorted? What would be the motivation?
Do you expect the people who came to kill and steal from you to tell the truth about who you are? As I recall, one of the ways that they would go after land and people and
Mhm.
resources in Africa and in the Americas was to claim that if the people were heathen, then that meant that it was basically uninhabited land. So when they first started, it was only land where there were no people living.
Okay.
But their greedy selves couldn't stop at that. Then it became, if you were a heathen, if you were savage, then of course it's like wild animals living there. We can lay claim to everything. And so we cannot expect them, one, to understand our culture,
Mhm.
two, to respect our culture, and three, to ever tell the truth. Because to tell the truth will be to show themselves as the actual savages and barbarians that they were. So, what you do is you project what you are onto the people that you are trying to decimate. And that way, you put out this narrative that these people were less than human,
Mm.
and then you talk about the white man's burden as though
Mm.
you came to civilize us. We did not call for you, we did not ask for you, we were minding our business and really thoroughly enjoying the gifts that God had given us where we were. So, of course, absolutely. In fact, anything you read that they say, you should automatically assume is a lie. They cannot tell you the truth. To tell you the truth would be to provide all the evidence for their own condemnation. Of course, we know that they still managed to do that because one of the things that they would do is to steal from us and go and put it in their museums. How do you justify how the creations of these uncivilized, heathen, savage, less than human people are now good enough to be
On
put
exhibition.
up in your best museums that you spend millions of your money to exhibit? Who takes anything from a wild animal to go
Mm.
and exhibit it? Do you understand what I'm saying? You say,
Yes, yes,
oh,
yes.
a bird made this nest, and then now we're going to have a whole museum for the bird's nest. No, you knew what we were, you knew what we were capable of. And when you steal it from us, first of all, it enriches you, but also then we no longer have access to the proof of who we actually are. And we're more
Mm.
prone to now believe what you say about us. You cannot believe those people. Anything that they say, turn it around, and then you will find the truth. They cannot tell the truth about my people. And you know, When I'm talking about how they came as friends or supposed friends in the 1300s, how they killed and slaughtered us and sold us off from really the late 1400s, moving on to the 20th century almost, definitely the 19th century. Um, what you see is they've never left us alone,
Mm,
because that area that my family comes from, that my people came from, is still under attack. In fact, I heard that today, as we are talking, a representative of the now United States of America, the father in law of the rapist that you people elected, maybe not your people, but some other people elected as their president, that his daughter's father in law is in Congo, in my homeland, today, right now, as we speak, because they have never left us alone. They have never stopped wanting what we have, and they will never stop lying about us. Don't forget our brother, Patrice Lumumba. We have a long history of being
mm.
attacked by these people.
The what you've just spoken about now with regards to the continued colonization of Congo lends itself and reminds of the dehumanization in crossing in Africans being taken across to the Americas, which is where we're going to go for the next iteration of Akutune. Now, with regards to Akutune's experience in the Americas, could you recall, I mean, without going into the traumatic aspect of it, or if you think that lends itself to how the experience is or how your personality came to be, then do share. But what would you say the experience was on the other side?
Ha! I want to tell all the stories. You know how you have a wound and you have to first clean it out. You have
Mhm.
to clean it out. You have to clean it out so that it can heal well. Why would I not tell all the stories? I'm not the villain. Why should I hide what these savages did? These people, under the guise of Christianity, of brotherhood, of love. No, I will tell all the stories.
Mm.
If someone murders somebody else, it's not to hide what the murderer did. No, we have to expose it all. Ah, I remember the day I was captured. Initially, I didn't even have the time to think about myself and what my capture might mean. I had seen the head of our king separated from his body. I had seen those barbarians hold up the head of our king, my father, in victory. I thought about my mother. I thought about my younger siblings. I thought about our people, and I wondered who would protect them now. I did not have time to think about myself as they dragged us and chained us, and oh, they were all so happy to find out who I was. But I was not going to give them the satisfaction of any fear or any tears. No matter what land I was on, I was still a warrior. I was still a representative of my people. I was still the daughter who had been taught about her divinity, who understood that our ancestors were with us wherever we went. But I think I was in shock for a while. You cannot imagine the depravity of these people. I heard, I still hear the cries of our women. And can I tell you of our men being sexually violated by these sadists? And I told my people, we cannot be broken. As long as we have life, we fight. We cannot be broken. But we had to figure out how to fight as they chained us and put us in the belly of this big ship, ships that had been used to carry trading goods from us and to us, now carried our bodies. Oh, how we wept. Some of us. Some of us kept a stiff upper lip. We had to do it for the sake of other people to help keep our spirits up. And we also had to do it so that we were quiet enough to continue to commune with our ancestors, even in the belly of that ship. We were tossed to and fro, to and fro, to and fro. Sometimes brought out to the deck where they would ask us to dance for them. We did not dance for them. We danced for our health. We danced to remember the drum beats of our people. We danced to stay connected. You know, there's power in the African drum beats. We dance to keep our spirits going, to keep our spirits moving. But some of us overcome with the degradation, smelling ourselves, having been violated more times than we could count. Some of us made our way over the ship. We'd rather join with our ancestors in the sea and let our souls go to where they may. Hmm. I was a strong and healthy woman, beautiful. Do you know what these people labeled me?
Go on.
These people labeled me a breeder. Breeder in their language, translated to English as a breeder. The same way you would get a prized cow or goat. And breed that animal. That is what they labeled me. But I would not be broken. And so, first, we landed in an area that we found out was called Recife. It was one of the largest slave ports in the New World. I was not sold to work in the fields. These people, in their minds, owned my body, my mind, and my soul. And it was for them to do as they pleased. And because they could not break me, they would throw me to the most savage men that they identified in their words, the most brutal men on that plantation. That is who they would give me to day after day, night after night, to have their way with me.
Hmm.
Ask me how I survived. Hmm. There comes a time in your life where you leave your outer body because that is what can be controlled. and you go into your inner spirit, and there you commune with your God and your ancestors. Yes, I felt the physical pain. Yes, I felt the degradation. But it didn't matter what they did to my body. They could not touch my soul. They could not break my spirit. My womb was to bring forth warriors to free my people. Hmm. You know, on the plantation, as much as they tried to keep us separated and so exhausted from working, we still had times that we communicated in ways that we communicated. And we heard that there was a place where there were other Africans who had made community and they were enslaved by nobody. At this time, I was 6 months pregnant, heavy with child. But as some of my daughters who have had children may remember, you get to a point in your pregnancy and all you want to do is prepare for your child. I think the in English they call it nesting.
Yes. You start preparing the surroundings.
I prepared. I prepared to escape. I prepared with some others of us who were also determined not to live the rest of their lives in bondage to these, I can't even call them people. And we escaped. Oh, it did not matter how far we had to travel in the dark, in the brushes, with the animals. I was a warrior. These things were not unusual to me. I brought my same skill sets and carrying my baby. In fact, I think knowing that I was carrying a baby gave me even more of the power to propel myself forward. And I did not stop. And I did not let anybody else stop till we got to that place. Hmm. They called it Colombo dos Palmares.
Mm.
And as I tell you this story, I have heard of my other daughters in many parts of the world. One, Aminta, right? Harriet Tubman, same thing. The DNA is there. What runs in our genes, what flows in our veins. And we women have always fought for our liberation. Don't let them sell you this stuff of now feminism. What is feminism? What is the weaker sex? What ask yourself, where did that come from and why? Go back and study your history. What are you talking about? Now you're equal. What are you? You bring life into the world.
Mm.
Hmm. Anyway, we ran and ran and ran, covering our tracks, not exactly certain of which direction, but following the information that had been given us. And we were not going to give up. Just like we danced on the boat to keep ourselves going, we tapped into that inner spirit. We did not allow ourselves to be consumed by fear that we would not succeed.
Mm.
We knew we were surrounded. We knew that they had all kinds of guns and dogs and everything. But to surrender is no life at all. And yet we were bringing forth life. So we had to continue. And so we fled inland deep into the lush mountainous terrain like my other sister, Nani of
The
the
Maroons.
Maroons.
Yeah.
It's a place that was called Serra da Barriga. It is now in a Brazilian state of Alagoas in the northeastern part of the country. That is where we arrived. And there were already a group of fortified, a settlement, a fortified settlement there of escaped Africans who refused to die enslaved. We knew we would die. Our physical bodies would die at one point, but we refused to die enslaved.
Mm.
Do you know that at the height, this place, Colombo dos Palmares, we had, it is estimated, between 20 to 30,000 Africans. We were fully set up, structured society. Everybody knew what role they would play. Colombo comes from the Kumbundu word meaning war camp or settlement, and Palmares is just for the surrounding palm trees. Some say that settlement started as far back as the 1500s. So way before I was born, way
Mm.
before when most of my ancestors were still in Congo.
People were
But
already
when we
resisting.
came, and with the knowledge I had from having been part of a nation, we created a nation. And one of the things that I am best known for, first of all, let me tell you that we women, we have always had our weapons. I hear you've been studying some of my other sisters, those who came after me, those who came before me, and there will be more that will come again. My weapon, amongst many things, was a sword. Ha ha! Can you see the glint on my sword? I was not afraid to fight for my liberation. Some of my daughters, their swords, their weapons might be a gun. Some it might be a dagger. Some it might be knowledge of poison. Some it might be knowing how to cook and be in places where you are a spy and you're getting information. Some might use their bodies. Some might use their pen. All of my children need to ask, what is my weapon?
Mm.
And you may have more than one. In fact, you should have multiple. Because if you ever got rid of my sword, I was trained in understanding plants as well. Wasn't my sister Nani as well?
Yeah.
What can you use to fight for your liberation? That's what I did. And my womb was one of my weapons as well.
Mm.
Because from my womb, I brought forth three children that we know of. One of them was known as Ganga Zumba,
Zumba.
and he organized Colombo dos Palmares into an even more centralized Maroon polity.
Mm.
We grew food, we trained soldiers, we preserved our African religion, we practiced capoeira. Ah, what a beautiful listen. We practiced capoeira when we were enslaved under the Portuguese, under the white man. They didn't understand because you can do capoeira and it looks like a love dance. But the whole time you're strengthening your body and you know how to move and you know how to disarm people. I was a spiritual leader and I was revered for this. But you know, these people, they couldn't leave us alone. They never leave us alone. They never leave us alone. All we say is, leave us alone. Do your own thing. Let us do our own thing. Leave us alone. If we are so barbaric, if we're such savages, if we're so lazy, leave us alone. We didn't ask for your civilization. We didn't bother you. Leave us alone.
Mm.
Hmm. What I can tell you is that it's not enough anymore to run from these people. Because for them, there's nowhere to hide. They don't stop. They have to be destroyed. This might be hard for some people to hear, but they have to be destroyed. Not because we want bad for anybody, but because they will not leave us alone. They will not live and let's live. The only way we live, our children live, is if we get rid of these people. There's no reasoning with them. I don't know what else to tell you. But when I look at our history, that is what my history teaches me. I don't know what your history teaches you. Hmm. So they fought with Ganga Zumba. But then tell you what, Ganga Zumba now wants to sign a treaty with them.
Oh, the
Telling you that
treaty.
these people always use the same tactics.
The treaty.
Where in our history has a treaty ever protected us? Whatever they tell you doesn't mean anything. And my grandson, his nephew, who was the son of my daughter, said no. Here again, whenever there's an issue with power and change of leadership, we're
Mm.
so vulnerable. Zumbi, known as Zumbi dos Palmares, eventually did take over leadership from his uncle, but it weakened us. And then Zumbi was fighting the Portuguese. But finally, in 1694, a final siege led by not just the Portuguese bandeirantes, these are armed slave hunters,
Yeah.
but also combined with other enslaved Africans. Ha! Ha! When will we stop fighting and weakening ourselves? How many times have we seen this same story? They never defeat us by themselves. They always need our help to defeat us. And those of us who think that we're going to gain anything from them, we get betrayed as well. Listen, I'm so happy that you are sending these stories out into the world because we must learn. Hmm. I heard in a place called United States of America that there are some of you who look like me who voted against a black woman and for a man who had already told them, I don't even think you're human. And then now that he is treating all of them as
Mm.
less than human, some of them are acting surprised. When will we learn? When will we learn? So, finally, remember I told you about this decapitation. Their tactics are the same. They fought using some of our own people, and in 1694, they brought Palmares to its knees. And do you know what they did?
Go on.
They cut off the head of Zumbi. They captured him in 1695 and they cut off his head and they took his head to Recife as a warning to others. This is what we do to Africans who don't know their place. They paraded his head. Tell me again, who are the savages? But you know what? You can kill our bodies, but you cannot kill our spirits.
Yeah.
My body bore so many scars, but I brought forth warriors. And from the ashes of Palmares, grew the spiritual roots of Afro Brazilian identity today. In fact, every November 20th, we celebrate Black Consciousness Day, Dia da Consciencia Negra. It is the day we commemorate the death of Zumbi. Our struggle continues. Today, Brazil is home to the largest population of African people outside of Africa.
Mm.
These people still won't leave us alone, though. The black, the darker skinned people in Brazil, we are still suffering more poverty, more police brutality, more underrepresentation. Just like black people in the United States, black people in Dominican Republic, black people in Mexico, they've gotten to our minds.
Mm.
But Afro Brazilians, keeping with our identity, we are preserving who we are through candomblé, through samba, through capoeira,
Yep.
and through our renewed pride in our maroon ancestry, even like our brothers and sisters in Jamaica and in so many other places where you had maroons. Descendants of Palmares today are still known as Quilombolas, and they continue, my children continue to fight for land rights and recognition.
Mm.
When you hear the drums, when we are dancing, when we are doing capoeira, if you listen, you will hear my name, Aqualtune. She was a general. She was enslaved. She was a mother of nations. And she was the fire that would not go out. My name means resistance. My name means resistance. It's not just an idea, it's a symbol of Black autonomy, African heritage, and resistance. That is what I want my children to know, and my daughters in particular.
I mean, you outline a very serious line for consideration in terms of history and memory recall. What would you say an added lesson from that time period would be, judging by the fact that you alluded to present existential threats to the very existence of Black people in the United States? Oh, that's a country to the north of Brazil. They have a very interesting character, short of a better word, to describe his persona in power. And the machinery around him are working in overdrive to sort of go back to the early 16th, 17th century.
What I would say is, as I try to answer your question, I'm in the belly of a ship, being tossed to and fro, the clanging of chains creating their own rhythm against the backdrop of the water, hmm, of the ship cutting through the water. It's a very disturbing melody. In the bow of that ship, looking around when you could barely see, but just every once in a while when the sun was high, there were little shards of light that would come in. We could barely make ourselves out. It would have been so easy and so understandable to give up. which way to turn. How? How do you fight? How do you live? You are at the complete mercy of these. I hesitate to call them animals only because once you dehumanize another person, then you can start to treat them like an animal. But even we understood that you treated animals with a certain amount of of spiritual understanding because we are all one, we're all interconnected. But in the bowels of that ship, some died of despair because it looked incredibly bleak. Can you imagine now being still shackled, pushed out onto the shores of a land that you've never seen? You don't know the direction. You can only look to the skies to see, okay, the sun is over here. That must mean east. It's over here now. That must be. And then to be mixed with other people who didn't even share the same language with you. But we did not despair. If we despaired, it was for a moment. We knew that what was important was to stay alive and to never give up fighting. And that is what I would say to my children everywhere right now. I don't care how bad it looks. I don't care if you feel like you have nothing but your mind. Then hold on to that mind and hold on to each other. Hold on to each other. Sometimes as they were marching us into into the interior, and one of us would get weak and fall, and the rest of us would try to hold them up. We would encourage them. We would share whatever little food they gave us in however way that we could. Imagine a grown person taking the horrible food they gave us and masticating it into a mush and then spitting it into the mouth of another because they were too far gone, too tired to be able to chew. We did whatever it took to keep each other alive. So, what I would say to my children is it doesn't matter what weapons they have, how they may have physical control over your body. Do the work to keep your mind free. Do the work to keep your spirit free. And never give up on your freedom. Never give up fighting.
Mm,
That's what I would tell them.
mm. Your story is more than history. Actually, it's a roadmap for resistance, especially the last part where you said about the passing of food to people. It's an act of resistance. You will not go this way, you will go with honor. So, in the continuing quest for justice, both in the United States and in places where injustice reigns, how do you think women, and especially Black women, can continue to lead the fight? We've been doing a series of stories on here about women who have taken it upon themselves. I mean, they're not wearing capes, they're just normal women, but resistance being the mainstay of their actions. How is it that, what would you advise to women who feel, well, I'm no superman or I'm no superwoman? I'm using the social structure term now. Would you think they can do to organize how we resist and how they resist and help the community to move forward?
First, I would say to my daughters, we do not lead or fight alone. We lead recognizing and celebrating the power in our duality. And so, in all of these stories, you will see women trained by men, men trained by women, women bringing forth men, men supporting women. We must fight together. So that's the first thing, is there must be unity within
Mm,
so that we can withstand the the enemy without. So one of our biggest weapons as women is that of understanding and nurturing. It is that of holding together our families. It is that of continuing to birth babies. Because I will tell you that part of, I will call it an agenda to have women, Black women, to stop having babies, whether it's the birth control that is being flooded in African countries. And I'm not saying that I want any woman to go and bear 17 children like some of our foremothers used to, but I am speaking to us understanding when we are making decisions of our own clear will versus being manipulated and being convinced to wipe our own selves out. So I would say understand your power, the power in your femininity. In addition to the fact that, yes, we have masculine energy as well as feminine energy, but do not feel that to be a warrior, to fight, to lead requires you to dull or ignore a part of who you are. You must come to this fight with everything, and that includes our femininity as well. It is not a weakness, it is actually a great strength.
Mm.
In addition to that, what I would say to my sisters across the world is to understand that we have always played this role and it should be no different during their time. Even if, as in the past, there were forces that try to diminish who we are, expect it, rise up to it, but continue. Because every step we take as women leaves a pathway for the next group of women to follow, to know that what they're doing is not new, is not impossible. I think that would be the essential advice that I would give our my daughters, in addition to everything else that I've shared already, which is identify your gifts, your weapons, and be good, become excellent with your weapons so that when the time arises, you are already prepared. You are not waiting to get prepared. You are already prepared. That is what I would say to our. I hope that answered your question.
Yep, yep. That did. Yes. In terms of I mean,
And one more thing I want to say.
go on.
I want to say that we women should not allow ourselves to be excluded from the seats where decisions are being made. And that we should make sure that as we're breastfeeding, as we're carrying that baby on our back, that we are telling, we are whispering to our children the stories of who they are. Because as I think of my homeland of Congo, if our people, if our leaders knew and understood our history and these stories, when the next set of white people show up, whether they showed up by boat or aeroplane or drone brought them, we will automatically see them in the
For what they are.
truth,
Yeah.
which is that they are enemies. Doesn't matter how much oil they put on their mouth, doesn't matter what trinkets they bring to you. Look at your history and know, nah,
We've been
these
here
people
before.
do not mean any good for you. We've been here before. Resist. And the best time to resist is before you allow them to even land on your soil, and then you lay out hospitality for them because we're very hospitable people, and then say, oh, come and eat, get your strength. No, if you're going to lay out anything, make sure it has all been poisoned. That is what I would say to my people.
Well, do you have any reading material with regards to the history of yourself and your people?
There is a lot that has been written about me and my people, but you will probably have to learn Portuguese.
Portuguese, yes.
Now, today, I hear you people have this technology where you can copy something and then you
It's called
uh,
Google Translate.
put it, it's called Google Translate, and then he'll translate it for you. But there are many books. Aqualtune, Sonho, Chamado, Liberadede by Anita Costa Prado. There's
Hmm.
another one written by Manuela Gonzaga, Aqualtune, A Princess do Congo. There's another one written by Ana Cristina Massa, Aquatune, As Historias de Africa. There's another one written by, if you Google, you will find so
Yeah,
many stories
most
about
of them are
me
in
and my
Portuguese,
people,
though.
but most of them are in
Are in
Portuguese.
Portuguese.
But you know what? Hmm.
That's the beauty
As
of
much
technology as
time
well.
when we talk about gifts and how we work together and how we understand that we're all connected, because just right now we've talked about my people in Congo, we've talked about us being in Brazil, we've talked about what my sisters did in Jamaica and what my sister did in the United States of America. We can talk about what we did in Haiti. We're all connected, and our fight is the same, and the tactics they use are the same
Yep.
everywhere. So maybe for some of you, what your gift is, what your weapon is language. You learn language and you get the knowledge and then you translate it and you share it with other people. That might be your gift, because some of us might not know. Oh, wait a second. You mean the same thing that they did in South Carolina?
Mm.
They did it in South Padre. They did it in. We need to know these things,
Yep.
and then we can see the links. But I want to tell you that when we resist, we win. Even if the winning doesn't always look like we want it to, as long as we're alive, we still have,
A
we're
chance to
still
fight.
getting there, which is why they're still fighting us,
Hmm.
which is why they won't leave us alone, because they know better than we do our strength, because they know what they have done to try and get rid of us and they
Hmm.
can't, right? So in 1988, Brazil's new constitution officially recognized Quilombola land rights for the first time. That was almost 300 years after they decapitated my grandson. But our spirit was strong. Today, thousands of Quimbola communities exist across Brazil, and we're still fighting for our legal recognition. And as I told you, every November 20th, instead of them leaving my grandson and maybe today he'll be forgotten, they have made it where every November 20th, the whole country, the people who have consciousness, celebrate him. And now, those of you who are not even in Brazil, you will
No, that
celebrate him
date.
too.
Yeah,
You will
exactly.
never forget November 20th.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yes, and on that very happy note, we've come to the end of another
Get
exciting
get
episode.
your weapon. Get
Yes,
your weapon.
get your weapon. And for next week, we'll be going to the land of Kenya
Yes.
and recounting the story of another ancestor, Wagari Mafai, uh, the Queen of Greens, as she's known. And yes, we'll be going to Kenya to look at the story of Professor Wagari Mafai. And so that will be our story for next week. And sister, any final thoughts?
Totally leaving character here. Adesoji, I'm so grateful to you for deciding to provide this platform, this forum for us to do this. Um many of these women I had already studied and written about. Aqualtune was not, she was on my list, but I had not yet done the research on her. But with each passing week, I am just getting so strong in my spirit in terms of the work that we must do and the history that we don't know and the ways in which we women are allowing ourselves to buy into a narrative that weakens not just us, but weakens our community and weakens our pathway to liberation. Lorna says November 20th is my granddaughter's birthday. There you go.
There you go. You have something to remember now.
Absolutely. Um, that is Black Consciousness
Consciousness
Day.
Day.
Black Consciousness Day, your granddaughter's birthday. And imagine telling her that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Imagine how our children could show up differently. You know, there's this whole concept of imposter syndrome. There's this whole concept of us feeling like we have not earned to be in certain rooms. But if we really had an understanding of what we've endured, what we've come through, the joy, the creativity, regardless of the trauma. If I may, that is one thing that she had wanted me to share that I did not write down and I forgot to share. So many women, and now I'm gonna say specifically Black women, experience sexual trauma, and it just reconfigures our brains in a way that we never see ourselves as whole anymore. There's always this shame, and that's why she wanted to tell that story of being a breeder and the way her body was abused,
Mm.
because what they do to your body does not in any way diminish who you really are. And so even if that is your story of being sexually assaulted or physically assaulted, or even emotionally assaulted, understanding, but definitely for those who experience that assault on their bodies, to just know that that doesn't define who you are. And like Aquatune, your spirit is strong, your spirit is beautiful, and your spirit endures.
Mm.
Yeah. So thank you. And
No.
for everyone watching, please like, please subscribe, please share. I don't know about you guys, but I'm learning so much from these women. And I hope you are too.
I mean, like you said, the use of technology has helped lift the veil on who Aquatune is. Because when we started the research, it was basically Portuguese, Portuguese, Portuguese. So, but Google Translate, mm, you have to you have to make do. Yeah. So next week we're looking at uh, Professor Wangari Maathai, like I said earlier,
And
and
I would say on her, anybody who thinks I already know her story, if you haven't really researched her, yeah, there are things that are out there in the commonly known about her if you've heard about her, but there is so much more. And I'm very excited to bring her to life, hopefully next week. Yes.
next week, yes.
Yes.
And yes, so until next week, Sister Aya, final thoughts, final thoughts.
Just grateful, grateful that we live in this day and age and that we have access to this history and these stories. Very grateful.
Yes. And from me, it's always great, grateful for having to learn about most of these women. Some of them I've never heard of. I mean, some of them I knew by reading some of their works, but the extent to which the veil has been lifted on their backgrounds has been truly informative, enlightening, and also, dare I say, empowering in the sense that you now have a broad idea of who these people are and what they represent to the larger polity, not just Black women. And you know what they say in the African parlance, when you want to nurture a village, give the wealth of that village to the woman. And as they say, the
And
rest
I
is
mean,
history.
I know we're trying to end here, but what just came to mind is how, for all this time, many of us have been lied to and told, we didn't resist, we didn't fight back.
Yeah,
What is it? What did Kanye West say? If
it
you're
was a
enslaved, it's
choice.
your
Yeah, yeah,
fault.
it was a
It's a
choice. Yeah.
choice. All of that
Hmm.
kind of stuff. Like bull crap. Bull crap. Like we fought. We've always fought, and we better not stop fighting now. So in the United States of America, where people are like, well, black women have fought enough, we're gonna just rest. We're gonna sit this one out. That is not our heritage.
Mm,
We have
mm.
never sat out fighting for our liberation.
Yep.
Never. We might regroup, it might look different, but we have never just sat out and hoped that it would work out for us. We've always been in the midst of the fight, and many times leading the fight. So, sisters, come on.
And the fight continues as well.
And the
So
fight continues. The struggle continues. And guess what? We win.
yeah.
I don't know when, but we will win.
Hmm.
We
I
will win.
mean, the mere fact that we're still here fighting is a victory in itself. So
That's right. We will
yeah.
win.
So
Thank you.
next week, Wangari Mafai.
Yes.
And good night and God bless. Yeah. That's another episode. Yeah.